Hi guys, Olive here today to talk about my favorite classic books. Believe it or not, I did not grow up loving the classics. With one big exception, I was not a huge fan of them during school, nor did I major in English. And so by the time I started this booktube channel in 2015, I felt rather behind. But thanks in part to the love that other booktubers had for the classics, there did come a point when I decided to correct that I wanted to correct that. I decided to build my own classics education, mainly through reading lists, but then also, strangely, through doing deep dives into episodes of the TV show Wishbone. More on that later. But now, years later, I feel like I have finally read at least most of the books I feel I should have read back during my formative years, and I've definitely developed some preferences. I think I've really come into my own as a reader of the classics. So I want to tell you about my favorites. This list contains, in no particular order, a mix of books that surprised me, shaped my taste, and completely changed the way I think about the classics. Starting with a heavy hitter right away, Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell, a simultaneously charming and heartbreaking story about a father and daughter whose lives are forever changed when he remarries and they become a blended family. Along the way, we also begin to follow a wider cast of characters in their community. This book has family drama, it has romance, secrets, a bit of a game of social chess. It is everything you want in a good Victorian novel. I never would have read this without the influence of BookTube. It was other booktubers talking about how brilliant this was that made me want to pick it up. And when I did, I fell for it so hard that it felt like my heart was going to explode out of my chest. And then when I just fairly recently reread it, I found I appreciated it all the more because not only is this story captivating, but this book contains some of the most realistic characters I've ever read. Which is to say, they're flawed. They're often self-contradictory. They contain strengths and weaknesses almost in equal measure. One moment they're frustrating you, the next you're rooting for them. This is the kind of book that has the power to turn classic skeptics into devotees. And I should know, because I'm one of them. From a book that made me feel to one that made me think, I was absolutely shocked by how much The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera spoke to me. I say that because I'm normally the type of reader who enjoys a well-crafted plot. That's pretty important to me. And while there is a story somewhere in here, this is much more of a thought experiment than it is a traditional novel. This is a modern classic. It was published in 1984, and in it we follow two different couples in 1968 during what was known as the Prague Spring, or the mass uprising against Soviet rule. And although it is set during a very tumultuous, dangerous, revolutionary time, it is quite the calm, introspective novel. It wants to examine those historical events through these two couples, these four characters, the push and pull dynamics between all of them, while it's also pondering ideas like lightness versus heaviness, truth versus lies, love versus indifference. All that to say, this is a heavily philosophical novel that seems to want to have a conversation with you as the reader more than it wants to tell you a story, which, as I said before, is normally not my kind of thing. But there is just something about this book that completely sweeps me up in its atmosphere and its steady contemplation of life. Even sitting here talking about it makes me want to dive straight back into this world. It's reminding me that I'm due for a reread. Another one that took me by surprise and never really let me go is The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. Now, at the time that I picked this up, I had already read The Age of Innocence, so I did already know her writing is incredible, but it wasn't until I was reading this book that I truly understood her power. Lily Bart is our main character in this novel. She is a drop-dead gorgeous woman who is seeking an advantageous marriage to secure her the comfort and position in life that she desires, and it's what her mother wants for her, but who also, almost pathologically, refuses to do the right thing for herself, infuriatingly so because the right choice seems to be right in front of her nose, and by ignoring that, she sets her own downward spiral in motion. Edith Wharton was just a master social satirist. She used her characters to expose what she believed were the morally rotted aspects of Gilded Age society. And I feel like Lily Bart in The House of Mirth makes for an especially fascinating psychological character study. And the moment I finished the last page of this novel, I immediately got to work trying to get into her mind. And that became what I now believe is one of the strongest videos on my channel. I will link that for you below and up in the cards if you haven't seen it. I feel like it's an especially fun video to look back on now because you can feel how breathlessly wrapped up in the book I am in that exact moment. I maintain that this is the novel that should have won her the Pulitzer. But at the very least, it's the one that made me an Edith Wharton fan for life. The next classic on my list is technically a play, but my love for it runs so deep that it belongs on this list. The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde, the playful and witty tale of two thoroughly unserious bachelors who regularly use their own flavors of subterfuge to get their own way, but whose pasts both come back to bite them when they set their sights on women they're interested in. There's a fun twist at the end too, but it is really the way this is crafted that gives it its magic. It is bursting at the seams with wordplay and absolute tomfoolery. I have seen the movie adaptation. I have seen this performed by professionals. I've seen this performed by tiny local theater companies that have people who've never acted before in their lives. And it is the intelligence of these lines that make every single version feel like a smash. It's just as electric on the page, too. Every time I think about this, I just can't keep a smile from erupting across my face. There is very little in life that makes me as happy as The Importance of Being Earnest does. Now, when I was considering what books I should put on this list of my all-time favorite classics, I, of course, thought about Jane Austen, who, by the way, is an author I had never previously picked up before becoming involved in the online book community. I've now read all of her books. But much as I tried to pick a favorite amongst her works to put on this list, I just couldn't. I love Pride and Prejudice and Mansfield Park pretty much equally. Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen's most famous, arguably most beloved novel, is of course the love story between Lizzie Bennet and Mr. Darcy, but it also gives us a window into the life of the entire Bennet family. Then on the other end of the spectrum is Mansfield Park, a much more polarizing story of the meek seeming, but actually morally sturdy character of Fanny Price, who is a kind of Cinderella-like figure living with her exhausting extended family. I don't know how I dodged spoilers for Pride and Prejudice until my mid-20s when I read it for the first time, but I am so glad I did. I got to experience all of these surprises for myself, and not only was it delightful, but it also offers so much to dig into when it comes to the characters. Just like Edith Wharton, you can feel that Jane Austen was just a master at social observation. It gave her this deep understanding of human nature that allowed her to craft these characters that feel like real flesh and blood people. And although Mansfield Park isn't as widely cherished, even among Austen fans, I was still just as impressed by Fanny Price as a character. I may not relate to her on a personal level. I'm much more of a Spitfire, admittedly, but that did not stop me from being inspired by her resilience and her determination to stand firm in her own beliefs. After I finished Mansfield Park, I found myself genuinely perplexed that it isn't more well-loved. So much so that I felt compelled to make an entire video defending Fanny Price. It's another one of those videos where you can feel how energized I get after I finish a book I love. I'm practically vibrating. It has unexpectedly become one of the most viewed videos here on my channel, but just in case you haven't seen it, I will link it for you up in the cards and down below. I think it's also incredible that I managed to avoid spoilers for Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte for as long as I did. I was in my early 20s when I read this, and I think the fact that I went into it not knowing a single thing about it helped it earn a spot amongst my favorite classics. This novel tells the story of the titular character from her very tragic start in life through her young adulthood, when we see her become the governess to the ward of the very stormy Mr. Rochester. This book is dark, it is emotional, it's completely absorbing. It's the classic that made me realize I could like the classics. But how much I loved this only served to confuse me further why I was forced to read Wuthering Heights during school instead of this, or any other Bronte novel, or any of Jane Austen's novels for that matter. I don't feel like I was really set up for success there. But in any event, Jane Eyre remains one of my favorite classics, and I will forever be grateful to this novel for figuratively opening up the door into the world of the classics for me as an adult. I'm realizing now, though, that there was a hint in my younger years that I may someday go on to be an appreciator of the classics, because there was one book I read in school that I actually loved. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, and it's remained one of my favorites ever since. This is, of course, one of the most famous American novels of all time. It is the jazz age story of longing and reinvention. It's about the lengths that the newly flush Jay Gatsby will go to in order to win over Daisy, the girl he couldn't have when he was a poor young man. This is a book that has stood the test of time, not just in the literary world at large, but also in my own personal reading life. This was a life-changing read for me when I was 16 years old, and it still holds its own, even amongst some very serious competition on this list. I've been meaning to give this one a reread and finally pick up some of those retellings that have come out since this entered the public domain back in 2021. Another American novel on this list entered my life with a bang a few years back. Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. And in this modern classic, we follow Janie Crawford, a Black woman living in the 1930s American South. We see her searching for both love and agency as she navigates 3 very different marriages. This book is lightning in a bottle, and I didn't even know I was waiting for the storm. It is a showcase of gorgeous writing, characters with grit, the roller coaster that is life with its highest of highs and lowest of lows. I was not prepared for this, but boy did I need it. And then finally, the last classic on this favorites list was probably the biggest surprise of all, The Personal Recollections of Joan of Arc by Mark Twain. And it was surprising because it came into my life through my 5-year-long series, my project here on this channel of going through the 90s PBS Kids TV show, Wishbone. In my series, I would read the classic that the episode adapted ahead of time so that I could watch the episode and in the video that I made, compare the two. That project opened up my eyes to so many classics that I never would have touched otherwise, including this lesser-known Twain, which frankly deserves so much more attention, and not just because I say so. Twain himself thought this was his best book. When you read this, you will understand why. Mark Twain spent years of his life researching the life of Joan of Arc to make this as historically accurate as possible, and it seems like through that process, he maybe accidentally became one of her most ardent admirers. There is such a deep respect, almost reverence, woven into the fabric of this book, and it captures Joan's spirit in such a lively way that it makes it impossible not to root for her, even though we all know the tragic end that awaits her. I loved Wishbone back in the day, and I feel like I may love it even more now that I've spent countless hours of my life revisiting it, reading all those classics it first introduced us to as kids. It was just such a perfect full circle ending to that journey that the show demonstrated that it still has the ability to have an impact on my reading life even now that I'm an adult. It handed me a new favorite classic, practically wrapped up with a bow on top. In fact, it's also been a gift for me that so much of my development as a reader of the classics has played out right here on my channel. It's super cool for me that I will always have those videos to look back on. But more importantly, I think that also provides really good evidence that anyone out there, even if you didn't enjoy assigned reading during school, can go on to become a lover of the classics, because I'm living proof of it. Let me know what your favorite classics are in the comments below, but even better, tell me which classic brought you into the world of classic literature and when you read it for the first time. I feel like we all have those moments when our reading lives are changed for the better, and I can't wait to hear what yours is. If you want to check out any of my favorites, they are listed and linked for you in the description box below, along with links to videos where I've discussed them elsewhere on my channel, just like I promised. And if you want even more great book recommendations, be sure to check out my lists of fiction and nonfiction favorites as well. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.